Welcome back to Joy Even on Your Worst Day. I'm glad you're here. So when I was a kid, on more than a few occasions, I would hear my mother cry out to me, "Put that down. You could poke somebody's eye out with that." It's rather graphic. She would said it more than a few times. I'd have something in my hand. "Put that down. You could poke somebody's eye out with that." She said it enough. It might make you wonder if in my neighborhood there was an epidemic of kids with eye patches on. Wasn't the case. It was just hyperbolic language to say, hey, this is important. If I read it, Paul is engaging in the same. He's saying, hey, Philippians, this is important. 3 times he says, beware. Beware of the dogs, the evildoers, the mutilators of the flesh. What's he driving at here? He's arguing with those who would have what he describes as confidence in the flesh. Now, before we define that, let me just say that what's at issue is those who are speaking about confidence in the flesh are at risk of saying, you know, the grace of God revealed in Jesus Christ is not enough to save us. We need to earn our own salvation. And Paul is adamant about this. This is the bottom line. The grace of Jesus Christ alone is what saves us. And the way he speaks to those who have confidence in the flesh is he says, look, if you think you have reasons for that, I can play that game and I can win every time. He says, I've been circumcised on the 8th day. I'm born of the people of Israel. I'm of the tribe of Benjamin. He says, every privilege that results from birth, I've got it. We know what he's talking about with those kind of things. Not everybody is born Robert Crawley, Earl of Grantham. Some of us are just Mr. Bates. Paul is saying in the practices of Hebrew birth, I excel, but not just privilege of birth. He says when it comes to religious practice itself, I excel. As to the law, I am blameless. As to zeal, a persecutor of the church, I have practiced my faith as it should be practiced. I have more reason for confidence in the flesh than anyone. But then he says, but compared to the grace of God revealed in Jesus Christ, all of that privilege, all of that practice, I count as rubbish, as garbage. And we want to understand this carefully. Paul is not saying that religious practice is garbage. He's saying it just doesn't save us. That the only thing that saves us is the love of God revealed in Jesus Christ. That is what makes us right with God and with one another. But practice is important. It's just not ultimately important. You know, there's a foolishness that results in elevating things of lesser importance to ultimate importance. But there's also a foolishness in assuming that if something is not ultimately important, it doesn't matter at all. I was introduced to soccer when my kids were little. 5-year-olds out there kicking a soccer ball around. They didn't have positions. They just kind of grouped around the ball, kind of amoebaed one way and then the other, and every now and then the ball would escape the amoeba and slip into a goal, and everybody would clap. It was all fun for them. But I was with the parents on the sidelines, and as the parents would watch the game, it was sometimes hard to keep up with the score. We wanted to know the score. Is it 5-4 or 6-4? And we worried about skill development. Is my kid doing as well as he should be? And we worried about the rules. That other kid, he looks like he's in 2nd grade. And we worried about the score, and we worried about whether the coach was paying the Johnson kid more than my kid. And did I mention we worried about the score? Well, one day after a particularly horrible game, 5-year-old Joey, a friend of my son's, he was with his mom on the sideline. our team had lost, I think, 21-3. And Joey's mom, Cheryl, she knelt down to him and she said, "Son, you played great. I was so proud. You tried hard. You can't win every game. Just try your best. I'm sorry you lost. 21-3. I'm sorry you lost." Joey looked at his mother and said, "We lost?" You know, every Saturday there were 2 games going on. There was the game the kids were playing, and there's the game the parents were watching, and one was far more important than the other. Now, you know, skill development, it matters. The score, it matters. It just doesn't matter ultimately. And you want to keep straight how those things relate to one another. That's what Paul is saying. Here's what I mean by this. Faith lives through practice. We pray. We worship. We practice generosity and graciousness. We say prayers at mealtime. Those are all spiritual practices. Does worship save you? No. But worship matters. You see, a faith without practice, daily practice, working out salvation, as Paul says, a faith without practice will dissolve into abstractness. But a faith that assumes the practice is the whole will reduce it to things that are too small. Paul says, compared to the grace of Jesus Christ, nothing I do matters. But because the grace of Jesus Christ can be trusted in my life, everything I do matters. And then he says, we've got more work to do. There is an incompleteness with Paul. He says, I've not already attained. I haven't reached the goal. I press on. I strive to make Christ my own because he has made me his own. There is in Paul an urgency, a movement. It's almost athletic as he strives toward the goal of resurrection. What is he getting at by that? He's pointing to the fact that our practices of faith, they need to be chosen day by day by day. And he's also acknowledging that we're not perfect at it. We don't live our faith perfectly every day. I love the honesty in Paul's voice here. There's a theologian, Hans Kuhn. He once wrote at the beginning of one of his theology books, he said, the author writes this theology not because the author is a particularly good Christian, but because he believes Christianity is a particularly good thing. I think that's what Paul is saying. We strive, we press on, not because we're particularly good at it, but because this life of faith is a particularly good thing. I read about a kid named Ben Coleman. He ran cross country in high school. He was not a fast runner. As a matter of fact, not only did he never win a race, he never beat anyone across the finish line. But of all of his teammates, they waited for him, and kids from other teams would wait for him, and people from town came out to watch Ben Coleman run. Ben had cerebral palsy, and CP left his body uncooperative. He was not particularly good at running. And I don't know what would make people come watch a kid run a race who's never going to win. Except maybe it's that they identified with him a little bit, not in athletics, but in the things that really matter in our lives. Because isn't it often the things that are really important, when we finally figure out what's really important, we discover we're not particularly good at it? Paul says, then press on. Strive. Strive to make him your own, trusting that Christ has made you his own. That's the good news, the gracious news of this. You press on not because you need to save yourself. The love of God revealed in Jesus Christ has claimed you because you can trust in that. press on, because everything we do now has meaning.